A 9-year-old girl, an elementary school student, went missing without a trace in her hometown of Sanjo, Niigata Prefecture, Japan. Despite an intensive search, the police were unable to find her or any clues. But the truth was that on the day she was returning home from school, a strange man attacked her, grabbed her, and threw her into the trunk of his car. He then kept her locked on the second floor of his mother's house for 9 years, never once letting her outside. Fusako Sano was abducted by a mentally ill man who threatened her with a knife. His name was Nobuyuki Sato, and he was 28 years old at the time. He was unemployed. Sato was born in 1962 into a wealthy Japanese family. His father worked as a chauffeur for a wealthy businessman who owned a large company in Tokyo. The father had previously lived with another woman and had 5 children with her, but later separated from her and married Sato's mother when he was 62 and she was 36. Thus, Nobuyuki was a late-born child and, possibly because of that, was extremely spoiled. His parents denied him nothing. Once, he even pushed his elderly mother out of the house for refusing to buy him an expensive record. Sato's father built a large 2-story Western-style house for his wife and son, giving Nobuyuki a spacious room on the second floor, meant to be his childhood bedroom. Unfortunately, what was supposed to be a cozy room for one child turned into a living hell for another. Already in his youth, when Sato entered junior high school, he told his mother he was terrified of staying in that room. He was taken to a psychiatric clinic where, among other things, he was diagnosed with germophobia, an intense fear of germs and physical contact, along with an obsession with cleanliness. He became withdrawn, irritable, and aggressive. Over time, his phobia worsened. Sato began arguing with his father, and even threatened to disown him if he ever came home with the slightest trace of dirt. In high school, he stood out sharply from his peers. He was tall and stocky, about 175 centimeters, which is considered quite tall for a Japanese man. Because of his appearance, he was bullied and called ugly. Sato became increasingly reclusive, avoided social groups, showed no interest in girls, and harbored growing anger and frustration. He tried working at an auto parts factory, but due to his difficult personality and poor communication skills, frequently got into trouble. Once he urinated in public, another time he turned back home after encountering a spider web on the way to work. Eventually, he quit his job entirely and stopped leaving his room on the second floor, refusing to let anyone in, not even his mother. At the age of 19, Sato was involved in a shocking incident. After an argument with his mother, he declared he was leaving home forever and set fire to the household's Buddhist altar. The fire quickly got out of control and nearly destroyed the house. Sato was once again hospitalized, where he was diagnosed with a severe form of obsessive-compulsive disorder, aggressive behavior, and misogyny. After a month of treatment, he was released. He spent the rest of his time placing bets on horse races. One day, Sato told his mother that he wanted to be independent and planned to build additional rooms onto the house. No one objected. He began the construction with enthusiasm, but soon abandoned it and never finished. In 1989, Nobuyuki Sato was arrested for the first time. He had been watching 4 young girls walking home from school, followed them, chose one, and tried to grab her. He carried her toward his car, but the girl's friends called for help. High school students and an office worker intervened and managed to hold Sato until the police arrived. He was arrested for attempting to commit an indecent act. 2 months later, his father passed away, possibly unable to bear the shame. The court sentenced Sato to 1 year of probation. Since the chances of reoffending were considered low, he was placed under the care of his mother. As you can imagine, this decision would have horrifying consequences. Still on probation, Sato took his mother's car and went out for a drive. On November 13, 1990, around 5 p.m., he saw a little girl walking alone along the roadside. It was Fusako Sano. Later, Nobuyuki Sato said that the girl was so sweet that he wanted to take her home, to live with him. She was walking alone, there was no one else around, and everything happened quickly and spontaneously. Sato blocked her path with his car, stepped out holding a knife, and as he approached, he said, "Behave yourself and don't say a word." Fusako was so terrified she couldn't move. Sato easily lifted her and placed her in the trunk. He drove for a while, then pulled over, opened the trunk, tied her hands with tape, blindfolded her, and drove her home. At around 6:30 p.m., he arrived. To make sure his mother wouldn't see him bringing a girl into the house, he led Fusako through the unfinished extension. Then he walked back to the front door and entered the house as if nothing had happened. He took Fusako upstairs to his old childhood bedroom, removed her blindfold and said, "You don't want to end up like those other kidnapped girls, do you? You will never leave this room. If you break this promise, you'll be useless to me. I'll bury you in the mountains or throw you into the ocean." From that moment, her captivity began, and it would last for years. Long, torturous years. When Fusako didn't return home that evening or during the night, her mother contacted the police. A search party was formed, consisting of officers, volunteers, and teachers, around 200 people in total. They searched everywhere: abandoned houses, storage containers. Helicopters were deployed. More than 20,000 missing posters were distributed, but not a single clue was found. Meanwhile, Sato kept the girl hidden in his mother's house, and his threats escalated. He frequently waved a knife around her and inflicted injuries. At first, he tied Fusako so tightly she couldn't move at all, kept her bound to the bed, beat her for crying or trying to scream, and threatened to kill her if she tried to escape. Later, he began using a stun gun on her, supposedly for discipline. Her legs were tied together for almost a year, eventually causing her to lose all feeling in them. Whenever Sato left the room, he blindfolded her to keep her disoriented. Sometimes, he tied her up completely and threw a blanket over her. After a year or two, his cruelty escalated. Fusako had to bite the blanket just to stifle her screams. He began using wrestling techniques on her, beat her around 700 times with moderate force, and over 300 times with significant force. Some blows landed near her eyes, causing temporary blindness. In order to survive, Fusako developed a tolerance to pain. She even started using the stun gun on herself, training her body and mind to endure. This led to dissociative disorder. She mentally detached from the pain and escaped into herself. At first, she cried and trembled in fear, but over time, she gave up. She surrendered. It's important to remember, she was only 9 years old when she was kidnapped. Later, no media reports ever mentioned sexual abuse. As it turned out, Sato didn't seek that. Fusako was an object to him, part doll, part pet, part companion. He fed her, bathed her, talked about comic books and horse races, and then ignored her for days. He dressed her in his old worn clothes. In the beginning, he fed her 3 times a day, food either prepared by his mother or bought outside. But eventually, Sato developed the idea that Fusako might get diabetes. He noticed a large bruise on her leg, most likely caused by his own abuse, and became convinced that there was too much sugar in the house. He started feeding her only once a day. Fusako's weight dropped from 46 kilograms to 38 kilograms. She grew weak and spent most of her time lying down. There was no bathroom on the second floor where she was kept. Sato, obsessed with cleanliness, gave Fusako towels and plastic bags to relieve herself, which he would then seal. She was not allowed to step into the hallway. She rarely bathed, only using a basin. Sato himself trimmed her hair and nails, poorly and unevenly. Occasionally, he allowed her to watch television, listen to the radio, or read. He talked to her and considered her his friend. Later, during the trial, he would say, "I gave her everything necessary for normal development. Soon, she began to obey me well. I thought I wanted to live with her forever. We could talk about horse racing and cars. I liked her. She seemed like a girl my own age. I could never let her go." The door to the room where Fusako lived was never locked, but she never once tried to leave, first out of fear, and later because she had completely lost the will to act. During all the years of her captivity, she had no contact with the outside world except for television and radio. Her mental development stalled at the level of a 9-year-old child. Later, specialists confirmed that her cognitive abilities were significantly below the average for her age. Sato's mother never went upstairs. She had no idea that someone was living in her son's room. This was later confirmed when investigators found no fingerprints of hers in the room. The elderly woman was simply afraid of her son, terrified of his aggressive outbursts. To avoid confrontation, she tried to stay out of the house as much as possible and worked long hours. Even after she retired at the age of 65, her habits didn't change. She still tried to be home as little as possible. In 1999, the situation worsened. Sato began using the stun gun on his mother as well. In addition to beating her with his fists and feet, he started tying her up, releasing her only to use the bathroom. On January 12, 2000, the woman finally found the courage to call a mental health center to report her son's disturbing behavior and ask for psychological help, but they merely advised her to bring Sato in for an appointment. On January 19th, she called again, this time begging someone to come to the house. Her pleas were finally heard, and medical staff were dispatched. On January 28th, Nobuyuki Sato was at home. When he was told that he would be taken to the medical center for evaluation, he resisted. Authorities had to restrain him and administer a sedative. The police were called in. It was during this commotion that someone noticed movement under a pile of blankets on the bed. When the blankets were pulled back, everyone present was shocked to find a frail, pale girl with unevenly cut short hair staring at them in terror. When asked who she was, Sato's mother said in confusion, "I don't know. I've never seen her before." Fusako was told that Sato would not be coming back and asked what she wanted. She replied, "I'll stay here." When asked where her home was, she quietly said, "Maybe here." Sato was taken to a psychiatric hospital. Fusako was brought to a regular hospital, where staff tried to determine her identity in order to locate her family. She herself wasn't sure if her home even existed anymore. The police were stunned when they learned that the girl before them was Fusako Sano, the same 9-year-old girl who had gone missing nearly 10 years earlier. She recounted how the man had abducted her near her school, brought her to his house, and kept her locked away for all those years. Not once during that time did she leave the confines of the room, and now, nearly 10 years later, she had stepped outside for the first time. After a medical examination, Fusako was declared relatively healthy, though her condition was extremely serious. She was emaciated, dehydrated, and severely weak. The muscles in her legs had atrophied, and she could barely walk. Her skin was pale, her body thin, like that of a 19-year-old girl, but her mental development remained at the level of a 9-year-old child. Fusako was diagnosed with a severe case of post-traumatic stress disorder. After police contacted her family, she was finally reunited with her loved ones. Her mother didn't recognize her at first. The last time she had seen Fusako, her daughter had been just 9 years old. Nobuyuki Sato, who was 37 at the time, was immediately hospitalized. That same day, he was declared mentally unstable. However, within a month, his status was changed from suspect to accused, and on February 11, 2000, he was officially arrested. During the arrest, his mother came under harsh public criticism, but the elderly woman explained that she knew nothing about what had been going on in her son's room. He had strictly forbidden her from going upstairs, threatening violence. She had sought help from the police, who ignored her, and from a medical center, whose staff she managed to convince to come only after multiple attempts. All of this pointed to one conclusion: she was not an accomplice. Fusako Sano also confirmed that she had never seen her abuser's mother, even though she knew the woman lived somewhere downstairs. After Fusako's rescue, public outrage shifted toward the authorities. The main reason was that Sato had already attempted to abduct another girl back in 1989 in the exact same way, but he had been released with only a suspended sentence, and his name had even been removed from the police registry of offenders. He was not listed as a suspect, even though he perfectly matched the profile and had been in the same area at the time of Fusako's disappearance. When Sano was found, the police chief of Niigata Prefecture, Koji Kobayashi, didn't even show up at the station to oversee the investigation. It was later revealed that he had spent the night at a gambling parlor. Following the public backlash and a series of serious errors by law enforcement, Kobayashi officially resigned on February 26, 2000. The head of the regional police department stepped down soon after. The trial of Nobuyuki Sato began on May 23, 2000. Prosecutors proceeded with extreme caution, concerned about causing further harm to Fusako, whose physical and mental health remained extremely fragile. During the proceedings, Sato pleaded insanity. However, after a series of psychiatric evaluations, experts concluded that he was mentally competent, at least enough to stand trial. The maximum sentence for kidnapping in Japan is 10 years, ironically, less than the time Sato actually held the girl captive. Prosecutors, recognizing how unjust this seemed, did everything they could to push for a harsher punishment. They added every possible charge, even the most minor, including the theft of women's underwear from a store. Any means was considered valid to increase the sentence, and when Sato turned 40, he was sentenced to 14 years in prison on multiple charges, including kidnapping, unlawful confinement, and theft. Sato's defense team filed an appeal. On January 24, 2002, the case was brought before a Tokyo court, which decided to reduce his sentence to 11 years. This meant Sato would serve 10 years for the kidnapping and 1 additional year for the theft charge. He was then transferred to a prison in the city of Chiba. The rehabilitation of Fusako Sano, who had spent 9 years and 2 months in fear and torment under her captor, took nearly a year. Her parents relocated her to a rural area, away from journalists and public attention. Despite their efforts, she was left with severe difficulties, intellectual impairments, challenges in communication and social interaction. She struggled with sunlight, feared open spaces, and was terrified of unfamiliar men. Fusako's father remained silent for some time after Nobuyuki Sato's sentencing, but months later, he gave a public statement. Regardless of the sentence the criminal received, nothing can bring back the 9 years, 2 months, and 15 days stolen from my daughter's life. Our family was robbed of happiness. She didn't experience joy or sadness, only pain, suffering, and fear. But now, it's behind us. My daughter is slowly returning to a normal life. Fusako truly took steps toward a new life. She found joy in simple things. She enjoyed watching football matches, photographing flowers, got her driver's license, and even attended her coming-of-age ceremony when she turned 20. Although nearly 3 years had passed since her rescue, she remained under medical supervision, receiving psychological counseling 2 to 3 times a month. In 2003, while Sato was still serving his sentence, his mother passed away in a nursing home. Like her husband before her, she died burdened by guilt and shame. Later, Sato's prison term was extended to 15 years, in part due to growing public outrage over the leniency of the original sentence. In April 2015, after serving the full term, Sato was released. He chose to remain in Chiba, the city where he had been incarcerated. He moved into a small apartment and lived mostly on disability benefits, occasionally working a few hours a week. 2 years later, in 2017, Sato suddenly stopped showing up to work. Police visited his home and found him dead in his tiny apartment. He was about 50 years old. The autopsy failed to determine an exact cause of death. If you found this story interesting, make sure to subscribe to the channel. There are many more shocking cases ahead. What do you think about this case? Share your thoughts in the comments. Let's discuss it together.